Another Monday and another JoeLumb album review. I am JoeLumb. Feel free to leave a comment, share this video, smash the like button, subscribe to my channel, and click on the notification bell whenever a new video comes out. This week I review the polarizing 1996 record from Def Leppard called SLANG. For those that saw my rankings video on Def Leppard last week, I mentioned that it was one of the most polarizing albums of the mid-90s, mostly due to them departing from their signature sound and experimenting with some industrial and electronic alternative rock shit. But at least, and I did mention this when I ranked it 9th on my Def Leppard video, that unlike X, released in 2002, SLANG has some redeeming qualities, and I'll explain. Between 1993 and 1996, Def Leppard endured tons of hardships. Phil Collins got a divorce from his wife, Rick Savage had Bell's palsy and his father passed away, Joe Elliott and Rick Allen were arrested on charges of spousal abuse and assault, respectively. Though their recent studio outing Adrenalize was recorded during a bleaker time, following the tragic loss of original guitarist Steve Clark, but the absence of longtime producer Mutt Lange, for the first time on a Def Leppard record since 1980, made it possible to show what Joe, Phil, Sav, Rick, and Vivian Campbell, what they were really feeling at that time. This led to changes as they co-produced the album with Pete Woodruff, recorded together in a townhouse in Marbella, Spain, not to mention later recordings at Bowling Studios in Dublin, Ireland. Another change was less production in favor of more organic sound, catalyzed by Rick Allen's reversion into a semi-acoustic drum kit. First SLANG is the first official studio album for guitarist Vivian Campbell. He stated in an interview one time, "We knew we couldn't make a typical Def Leppard album in the mid-90s. He would go on to say, grunge was like very much happening and our stuff was anathema at the time. Personally, I think we could bolster those songs with a little more of that Def Leppard magic. But instead, we didn't. We went, no, let's keep it raw, no backing vocals. Let's not do that part because it's too melodic. Let's be more monotone. At least it gave us a chance to grow up a little. We live in a state of arrested development in this band, singing songs like Let's Get Rocked. So we did get to write some grown-up lyrics. And we were going through a lot of shit at the time. Sav's dad died on the eve of the first recording day. Joe and Phil were both going through divorces. So it gave us an opportunity to write lyrics that reflected the reality of our lives. Looking at the track listings here, Vivian Campbell, Phil Collins, Joe Elliott, and Rick Savage all contributed on this record. The four of them wrote Truth, clocking in at 3 minutes. Turn to Dust, written by Phil, clocks in at 4:21. Phil and Joe wrote the title track, SLANG, clocks in at 2:37. Joe Elliott wrote the song, All They Want Is Everything, clocking in at 5:20. Vivian Campbell wrote Work It Out, which clocks in at 4:49. Breathe a Sigh, written by Phil, clocks in at 4:06. Phil and Joe wrote Deliver Me, clocking in at 3:04. Gift of Flesh, Phil wrote, clocks in at 3:48. Phil and Joe wrote Blood Runs Cold, clocking in at 4:26. Where Does Love Go When It Dies, also written by Phil and Joe, clocking in at 4:04. And the album closer, Pearl of Euphoria, written by Phil, Joe, and Rick Savage, clocks in at 6:21. Def Leppard SLANG was released on May 14th, 1996. It is the first Def Leppard album, to my knowledge, that failed to go platinum. However, it did go gold here in the United States and their home country of the UK, while going platinum in Canada. SLANG reached number 14 on the Billboard 200 and reached number 5 on the UK albums charts. A reissue of SLANG came out on February 11th, 2014, and that featured additional tracks made up of early versions of songs on the original as well as previously unreleased stuff. My overall rating for SLANG is a 5.5 out of 10. I mentioned redeeming qualities with songs like Slang and Work It Out, which had that electronic and industrial sound to them, along with songs like All I Want Is Everything, which happened to be the album's strongest song, and a tear-jerking ballad like Blood Runs Cold. I felt that they had to change, and it was welcome to a degree, as they got to perform in Southeast Asia, South Africa, and South America for the first time. But I felt that the rest of the album really didn't connect with me. Maybe it had a lot to do with some darker themes, because it was at a time Def Leppard were really in a dark place, and abandoning their trademark sound was what angered most fans. Let me know what you think in the comments below.